So to continue from where we stopped yesterday in the project, today we are actually going to go on to complete to implement our authentication so that we can actually get this done with. So we head back to our project. Yesterday we did stop right here, and which is yesterday part 1 based on the time right now. We were creating our client users authentication, and we are creating we are creating just a basic structure. What we are going to do is remove this for now, because we are going to get serious about this now, and I would wish us to speed up this so we can get to actually implementing most of this. So go back to our table, and for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete everything that's in D1 and Wrangler state D1. I'm going to delete it because we are going to restructure our table, and as well going to delete everything that's under dot migration. Be careful when you're deleting so that you don't delete, most especially don't delete this, and we don't really mind that. If you delete any of the others, all you need to do is run whatever you're using, npm or pnp install, to just resolve all that. And so what we're going to do is, rather than having accounts here, we're going to remove that and remain with the rest of this. But okay, we shall get to that part. We're going to have this here. Just a minute. So we're going to have export const so that we have another table that deals with user account informations, which we shall reference from which we are going to reference from our users by the user ID. So the user ID under accounts, we shall have user and then the user ID itself. And then inside here we shall have we don't need this, we shall have username, which is going to be text, UID, we shall require this because I want to also implement a method whereby rather than just using the identifier as email itself, the user can actually log in with the username as well. So we shall implement something there. So we have email and password, Gmail and GitHub, and we can add more later on. We shall not implement these two right now for the moment. We want to get our email and password done so that we get to implementing other features. So username, let's have email here just right above it, and here we have email. Obviously this cannot be empty, it's going to be required. And then we can have avatar, which I would have loved the avatar to have not just a string itself, so that it's not just a string by itself, but have other details of the URL in it. But for now we shall leave it as it is, as a string. Let's just leave it as that. And then we'll need our user to have roles. We shall also have another part here for roles. so that we can distinguish which kind of role is supposed to access what part of our CMS. So we shall create roles type, and we shall have owner, we shall have an admin, we shall have a user, and as well we don't really need guest and editor, and this cannot be null, and then sorry for that, and then we have the type for it here. And then let's also add the default, so that by default it will be user. That's by default, it's supposed to be a user. Then this will deal with the login parts of this. I think we can have the created art and updated art here, because when we look at Firebase, the one that we are actually trying to mimic from, so it has signed in and created. So we have created and signed in, and here see, since this is going to be part of it, I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this part because it's quite conflicting and confusing. Should we leave it to remain here, or can we reference it from we could reference it from here. Okay, I think let's leave it up here, and we can add another part for verified. And default has false. Oh, it's supposed to be, see, I don't know if this has I don't think it does have that, so we shall define it through types, and the type would be a boolean, forgot to close this. So the type would be a boolean and can't be null, and no, okay, sure, it can be null, it can be null, so can be null, and we shall use it for verification. To to verify the email address, because we shall actually require the person to log in with an actual email address that we shall send the verification to, and by default it's going to be false. See? Okay, I think for this we shall so is there something I'm missing? I mean, which we can add other things here, or we shall add other things. And here let's also add let's change this to hash. Let's add neighbor username to enable authentication with username. And just like the previous part of verification, this will be a boolean, and we don't really require it to be non-null, because okay, just as verified doesn't necessarily have to be it's not required by default. We can also allow for I almost forgot that I didn't. We can also allow for username not to be like enabling authentication with username not to be enabled by default. You can enable it later on and authenticate using email using the username itself. But then comes the problem where we have to reference that from account itself. Which is an interesting thing, because when you think about it, the identifier is going to be the email, so it already exists here. And when we enable it, we should have username here. We could use, let me just think about it first. So we could have the username above here just to exist there, but if it is not enabled, it won't be used. So we can also still have it right here as well. But we can also reference it from right here. Okay, I think that works for us. So when it comes to Firebase, let's see how it's structured. Okay, Firebase password. So it's create user with email and password, and you pass the email and you pass the password as well. And this we shall use it to return the current user. current user. Let's name it that. Let's call it current user here. And for this, let's now create, the first thing we need to create is post for create user with email and password. Can name this like this and pass this to it, and just a blank one for now. Then I think it would be best if we added here const create user with email and password. It would be best if we added Zod to it. We added a way to validate all this, so let's go back here and look for Zod so that we can validate our application. See, so here we see there's an example with Zod. Okay, it's supposed to be with Zod. I was looking for something else. So we are going to add that library in order for us to have validation for the information that is being passed to our request. So there we go, and import that Zod. Okay, and the object itself, object for creating the user, we shall need the following. Let's see, insert so under insert, this is not required, create and update are not required, and UID is also not required for the user to pass in, and the user is not really required to enable username at that moment, but we shall add that provision just in case. That will be part of the function that we shall create. We shall need the identifier, which is going to be the email. We shall need the provider, which we shall also pass it from our validator. Shall we pass it from there, or shall we? No, we shall not pass it from there, from the validator. All we shall pass is the email, the password, and then the username. So I'm going to copy. Actually, I don't need to copy that. All I need is this string dot email, and I would like to keep it in the vertical structure rather than breaking it down. That's why I add print here, ignore the pretty print commands, and then we shall also need a username, and the maximum should be 12. I don't think there's any reason as to why you should have more than 12. Okay, to return that information. I think this already is returned for us. Our password should be a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 23 characters. And also these specific characters should be provided. Luckily enough, the autocomplete helped me finish this. So we shall have the password should contain small letters as well as at least a capital letter and 1 to 9. And also a number and a symbol, at least for just so that it's secure enough for us. So we have username and also that, and then we can add this here. Must be having a wrong example in mind. Let's see. Just a moment, let me figure out what this is. Let's add this as I try to rethink this, and then I'll figure out what that error is. don't know why this is not working, so let me try it from here. And it's JSON, this as well as that. Okay, I think this should be the correct method, but I did. This seemed a little bit off to me, to be honest. Okay, I mean, that's it. And since we already have the validator for this done, we really don't need to validate anything else from here. So what we're going to do, const db, and as you remember, we already have db get database defined for us, so there's really there's no need for us to fidget with that. We already have Drizzle defined, and since Drizzle surpasses environment, which we are not going to use at all, now we need to first what we're going to do is first check if the user exists. If the user exists, then we can't create that account. Okay. This isn't the correct way. When it comes to Drizzle, we use equals. So, and for our email, we do identify it based on on email. So our identifier is supposed to take the email address, but we also do have a username, and we can also reference that because we do want the users to have all unique names, so we can't add all here. O equals to username. and let's limit it to 1. So limiting it to 1. So basically, if it returns back when there's length of more than 0, because it's supposed to return back 0, if it returns back with a length of more than 0, then user already exists. We should inform the user that a user already exists. But else, if we do the check and the user doesn't exist, we can continue on to creating the user itself. So we shall start by encrypting the password itself, const let's call it password hash, and can await it. We used argo sorry, I've always messed up with this. We want to use this use argo because basically it returns back on verified, returns back a string or unidentified, which is really a headache to deal with, and it would be better off to just implement it here, since it's not really like a huge line of code. And we can import that. Okay, our password hash, then we can create new user with the insert user type and passing this information. Username, identifier done, provider. The provider is obviously email and password. Now we don't need to add these others since they're generated automatically for you, so there is really no need to use any of these, though it would be best for us to add enable username. By default it's going to be null. Let's pass the correct types there. By default it's going to be null, so we can add that here. Let's correct that spelling as well. Okay, so there we have it. And we can have now await. First and foremost, we need to create the table itself. Create new user, then this is the new user, so that we can have a returning and all. So the returning, we're going to, let's name it new user, so it returns just a single member of the current user that we have created. Now wait, I know there is a way of adding them. Because there is transitional, which will help us create the user table and as well the it's because I want us to insert the user table as well, inserting insert the user table as well as inserting the account information. So let's see if this works. Insert user. See. Copy this and just paste it right in here. Let me reference this so I can see what I'm doing actually. Okay, so we have this now available. Then we also need to create now await, insert account, it would be best to call it accounts, because it will have multiple accounts in it. So accounts and the value so we can take this from here. Actually, let's just create new user account and add the insert account type to it, and under insert account type, since the reference is from user, we can pass that reference of new user dot id as well. Okay, there's actually no need for me to get back there. I can just view this from here. And we need to update this as well to accounts, since we changed it the other side. So here we have the next. We shall add username, which we can get from new dot username, as well as email, user dot email. Sorry, that's not called email, it's called identifier. And for this, the role part of it, that's where we're going to have a really interesting part on this. So let me hope this is actually correct. You can close this. Okay, doesn't need an await for it. And here for the user, we do want to make sure for rows the first user in the database is always of role owner, and the rest will be user. So the first person to log into the account, that means that's the person that has actually created the system itself, will always be the owner of the system, and they can assign the roles of admin to the other users. So in order for us to determine that, we could use this to determine that, but it would be best to see, we could use this, but since this is also having to reference from here, it can't all all users in database. So in order for us, okay, that was quite easy. So if role of all users in database is equals to 0, that means this person is the first user in the database, and we shall give them the role of owner. Wait a minute, I'm not quite getting this. Because this would be returning up. Let me put it here. So it returns a boolean whereby the boolean is either true or false. We could actually remove this from here. And just add it here. We shall later on improve this, because if there are very many users, this process becomes kind of redundant. I don't know if it has count. No. So if equals to 0, because I'm greater with the greater than sign, it is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, it should return true, else false. If it is greater than 0, yes, it should return true, but if it is not greater than 0, then it should return false. Yeah, so I think we're on the correct track with that. Then the verification, since we haven't sent the verification to the user, we can allow the user to log in, and then we verify the user later on when they're done logging in. So for this, we shall just insert two accounts, and we can insert our value there. Now then, the part that is quite challenging is I most of the times don't like to allow the user to log in right after creating an account. I prefer the user to create the account, inform the user that they have successfully created the account, Then the user should head to the login part of it and log in with that account, and then we can verify the user from there. So here we should just give the return of user created successfully. We can pass a detail, probably so I think we can pass the user details from here. All okay. There wasn't really a point in that anyway. There wasn't a point in this. So created account is email, this, that, and for the sake of security, we shall remove that out of the way. See? Okay, let's do this. Shall remove UID and remain with all. So we shall return back all these details. I think we mostly need email and username, but well, it doesn't really affect us returning all this other information, so can actually return this. So it will return this information and the user. Yeah, and I think this is okay, because we have the status of success and success as true, returning the user. Okay, we got, so we have done that. Now comes to the part whereby sign in with email and password. Okay, that actually caught up faster. So signing in with email and password. So we have this, which we can't use since it's going to be different when it comes to signing in with email and password. So just indulge with me here, creating this object. Because I want us to get this done, we can do the other securing our database later, and then we can still add username here. And it's mostly just a string. As well as email can be nullable. Let's make both of these nullable. And for these we shall make them as it should be, they can't be nullable as they are required. So this is as well. So what's that? And for this, not really required. Anyway, we can leave it as it is because it returns false by default. And this is not nullable. No, these are nullable. That means they're not really required except for password. The password is required. Now for this part, we don't really check for validation of the password. Password is required. Remember me. Okay, for the lack of things to do, we can leave that in. But I don't really see the point in it. But for lack of things to do, we can add that in. And let's just copy our validator from above. Copy this as is. And do that. I prefer JSON just because it's quite, much interesting to work with compared to the rest of the junk around. Okay, now for authentication, we need to reference const current user await db dot select let's call this auth user rather than current user. Sorry, instead of from users, as instead of that, as now wondering what was wrong with this. And where, which we should use all. Obviously, the reason why we are using all here is this limit. But remember that the O now comes the interesting part whereby we need to figure out if this actually accepts authentication with wait, we have used equal to. Why is it having this error? Let's first remove all these. So we have the O here, to users dot fire email, and since they are nullified, they can be nullified as well as that. This is at least correctly done to my hopes, obviously. And since we are returning back one, we don't need to return back everything. Now comes the part where we need to confirm whether the user is logging in with email. If the user is logging in with email, it's okay. If the user is logging in with username, we need to confirm that the user actually has enabled the username authentication. So here comes that, whereby we have username if username is not null and email is null, then we need to confirm that if we shall improve on this and make it much better. I feel like I kind of threw myself in a trap. So confirm login method user has enable username, else return can't use method. Just a minute to confirm. Okay, I think we should stick to JSON for all of them. So basically the user doesn't have permission to log in with username enabled. User so and so doesn't have permission to log in with username enabled. else user can continue on with their login in details. So here we go. Okay, that was easy for me because and the password. Okay, that went easy for me. As invalid password, which we shall return. But since it's not invalid, we continue on. Now the last step here would be returning JSON blah blah something in the JSON itself. User logged in successfully, and the user details plus the status points, but we need to add the user to, we need to create a JWT. So hooks use helper TS and function or JWT, which we're going to export as here. Just and we need to define types right here. Types for props equals to, you're going to have a token, secret, no, we don't need those there. We shall have the payload of the information we shall put in our JWT. And I think we should have it here. Okay, here we go. Copy this. Hono should have this available for us. So for the JWT, let's copy this, that, paste it here. I think we can use UID, but now I'm going to just pass string and any. Will that work? I doubt this working. Then for the secret, we have to create secret, and just a minute, it would be best to put it here. And process from env dot, let's use the better auth secret itself. It's not like we had something different. Let's add the payload props here so that we can get the types correctly. Okay, from there, and rather than having it expire in rather than having it expire in 7 minutes, at best we can have it expire in 2 hours. I prefer longer. Let me hope this is correct because I'm starting to doubt this. Then shall create another function to verify the token. This is to verify verification, and same secret, so we don't have to repeat it always. Okay, we can check that as well. And those I think we shall use this, not right now, but later on. So we could remove this out of that equation, but we also need another function to cookie this information. Okay, I think we shall use the signed cookie for saving this, and we don't need here since it's all done from it's all done for us. Probably could pass context to it, could pass our context, and we copy this and add it right here where we show I want to implement this right here, set signed cookie, so that we don't have anything to return back, rather than just do it from this other side, and which we could also do easily, but I don't really see the point. And we can call it token. Shall rename it for token itself, and then we can define we shall definitely have another secret for set signed cookie. And we don't need to return anything, just as is. And then I think we can also do the same for this, but not to worry. See, for right now our user should technically log in correctly, sign in with email and log in correctly, and then when it comes to current user, we shall have to return this from our cookie itself. But since the video is becoming long, I think we shall start the next part from here tomorrow. So what we're going to do is generate our table and push it to the local and just have a look at it just for the sake of that. And here again, after generating it, local, now what we could do next is we can create another, in our compose backend we can create authentication. To creating authentication, we shall create types which will handle our types for the authentication, and our we can create our wrapper which we shall use for basically we shall create a wrapper inside there to wrap our authentication, basically to wrap the auth itself into it. And we can also create our REST here, the TS, so that we can make our REST API correctly. We can predefine the REST call here so that we can reuse it in the whole saga when it comes to, in the case of authentication. So here we shall have our types, export types for sign in with email and password. See, okay, here it will have create account with email and password, account with email and password. So it requires an email. Create an account requires an email, which is a string, username, which is a string as well, and a password, and returns, what does it return? Here it returns, should return a message. Okay, we shall add something here. We shall create another type to add the return. Same thing here, though we can have this name as well, though we can have these two as options. For create user, these are not options if I remember correctly. See, email, username, password, enable user name. Can also add this. And it's optional for that. That's optional. And for signing with email and password, it's supposed to be sign with email and password, and we do have remember me, which will also be an optional case here. Optional king, because we shall have other parts of it. So we shall export shall also export current user, which I almost forgot. Current user, and we shall have types for that as well, which the types actually should be. Anyway, I wanted to also bring back some information to relay back to the user. So for now, I'm going to restrain putting that there. So I'm going to export types of auth provider and create user with email and password, which is going to be this, as well as that. actually we don't really need this to exist here. Do we or don't we? We don't need it because our structure does force us to actually need this, but we can actually simplify our structure for this, and we can create our wrapper here. Export default function for auth wrapper, and return empty for now, which we shall create context auth context, sorry, we shall use context here to create our wrapper. And I think we shall start from there tomorrow, because we shall create our wrapper here, and then we shall implement. I think it's fine for us to implement inside admin. We can implement authentication from inside the admin itself. When someone logs in there, can create an auth path there with login, and create account plus verify, all that available right inside them. Now let's get back here to our table. Okay, that's done, and let's load studio to look at our table. If everything is, looks fine, because I think tomorrow we shall conclude with the JWT and cookie that information as well, deal with cookies, and as well deal with include, and then start making that call, and then we can conclude with that authentication for now, because later on we will need to improve that our structure, since it's not well done, and then we will later on get to the part where we implement other providers, like having authentication with email. Okay, still have all tables here. But that's fine, we can always change those with time. Because we have this, which is not in our table. Sorry. I don't know where this is coming from, and this as well. Oh, okay, these are references, sorry. I was wondering where they're coming from. Oh, okay. I figured that out. Okay. So our tables correctly done, and we shall start the next video from here because this video is way longer than what I expected. Thought it would be shorter, but we shall start from there. See you in the next video.